Hi, Chris. Thanks so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you talking with me today about the SECTF competition in SEVillage at DEFCON. Um, I know in the past there's been a few reenactments, so today we're going to go through something a little bit different. And I just wanted to have a conversation with you around um, what was done this year versus what was done last year, and then of course how you handled the competition in the past as well. So who are we? My name is Alethe Denis, and I won the SECTF in SEVillage in 2019 at DEFCON 27. And my guest today, Chris Kirsch, is the Black Badge winner also of the SECTF for DEFCON 25. And that was in 2017.
Yeah, that's right.
So welcome, Chris. Thanks so much again for joining me. I know that your time is short. So we'll hop right into the first slide. Just as a quick overview, I made 3 calls during the 20 minutes of allotted time that I had. And our very first call I made to the internal IT support for my target company, which we'll just call a Fortune 500 company. And the number that I spoofed was an internal direct dial or desk number for an employee that the voicemail went to just a vanilla female voice with no name. And the pretext for that call was that I was a new employee that was having trouble accessing a specific website that I needed to use for training. Some of the key flags that I tried to get from the IT support person were the operating system, browser, the Wi-Fi name, whether or not they block websites, if they use a VPN, if the IT support was offshore or in-house. And of course, I wanted them to go to the malicious URL because that one is, of course, the most points of any flag. So a highlight from that first call is here on this slide, and Chris and I are going to trade roles really quick and read this for you. So me will be the social engineer, and Chris will act as the internal IT person. So I said, I'm using a Lenovo ThinkPad laptop. Is that the same as what you use?
We're contractors, so we're not at your same company. We don't use the same hardware as you.
Oh, so you're offshore?
Oh, yes, we are.
Oh, wow. It's super late there. I'm so sorry to bother you.
Oh, that's okay. We're available to help you here 24/7.
So with this, I tried to denote the 2 flags that were in this quick exchange. And I think this really speaks to Chris, how you kind of put together this rapid fire. I know Whitney Maxwell, the winner from last year's SECTF, calls it the chokehold strategy, and that is to try to pack as many higher value flags into as short a span of conversation as possible, while keeping the conversation flowing naturally. Um, and if you want to speak quickly about how you came up with that idea.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's my idea, but I was basically trying to figure out what kind of flags could I pack into a certain pretext, and what was the shortest and most natural flow that I could have between the flags. And I put some of the higher value flags in the beginning so that if I only had time for a partial call in the end, that I would maximize my points at the end, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
actually a spreadsheet, all the points and all the flags by pretext, and to see kind of like how I could maximize the points.
Yeah, and I think Whitney and I both had similar strategies for selecting the highest point value flags and trying to knock those out quickly, but also saving time to go after the URL. And with this call, the IT support person was offshore, and he was really hesitant to go to that URL for me. And he kept trying to get me to do additional troubleshooting, and I kept steering him off of the troubleshooting process and just being like, please, can you just help me really quick? And, I'm trying to get out of here. It's after hours. I just need to see if this works. And maybe the website's broken. And if you could just check it for me real quick. And I just kept throwing my objections at him until finally he was like, fine, I'll check it. And then as soon as he confirmed that he saw the SEORG.org website, I just said, oh, look at that. I wasn't even connected to the internet. And I'm like, I'll call you back if I have any other problems. And so then I hung up really quick. And I figured he's got a story to tell about the silly person that just called him. For the rest of the calls that I was going to make, I learned during the course of the preparation time that we had that the person who answered the internal IT support number was the same person every time. They only had 1 or 2 people on staff, and I kept getting the same person no matter what options I picked in their menu. And so I decided that I would then switch gears once I was done with the internal IT support person, and then go after their remote regional sales managers. And so the second and third call I completed were both to the remote employees who were regional sales managers, to their cell phone numbers that they used for work. And I spoofed the same internal number that went to the vanilla voicemail with no female name, but a female voice. So that pretext I posed as an internal employee who'd been tasked with getting the remote users to give me information about the laptops that they were using, their company provided equipment, so that we could upgrade those laptops and make sure that they had the same software installed on it when they got their replacement machine. The flags that I focused on here were the operating system and version, browser and version, the computer make and model, the VPN, and the malicious URL. I also, between the first year I competed and this past year, I memorized all the flags. And the reason why I did that is so that I could work additional flags into the conversation if something came up that I could, draw from that knowledge and then work another flag in. So some of the additional flags that I tried to work in were how long they've been with the company, when the last time they did awareness training was, the type of phone that they use, their email client, and PDF reader. And so the first of those 2 calls, the first highlight, I was talking to a gentleman that was 3 hours ahead of me, and I got really lucky that he was near his computer. So I asked him, we've hired a new awareness training company, and we want to make sure that you're able to access the website ahead of our annual compliance training. Can you open your browser and go to their realcompanydomain.us?
Is Internet Explorer okay?
Yes. When you get to realcompany.us, can you confirm for me what you see?
Yes, I see security through education.
That's perfect. So the reason why I was able to use realcompanydomain.us is that this Fortune 500 company had the .com, but they'd failed to register the .us TLD for their company domain. And so I bought it for less than $8. And I was able to redirect that URL to the SEORG.org website, which is the flag that people have to visit that site in order for you to get the points. And that's why they were able to see the security through education banner. I would absolutely recommend reaching out to the contest runners if you have any ideas like this, just to make sure that you have them approved before you do them in the booth, because some things are against the rules. Luckily for me, this was not. So that's a little trick that you can keep up your sleeve if you're looking forward to competing in the future.
Yeah, I would second that. And also not always just against the rules, but sometimes even against the law. And
yeah,
so
that too.
The organizers, they can help you steer clear of any legal challenges as well.
Minor details, Chris. Legality. So for call number 3, I called a different regional salesperson, and when they picked up the phone and I managed to build rapport really quickly, I then asked if they were near their computer.
Yes, I've actually been on paternity leave for 3 months.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry to bother you. They just gave me this list and I'm so sorry. I had no idea. I actually just started back to work after having a baby myself. So congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
Is now an okay time to run through this really quick? I trust you want to get back to your evening and I feel the same way.
Sure, let me just get my computer to boot up here.
Okay, while it does that, can you confirm the type of laptop? Should say something like Lenovo ThinkPad on the lid.
Yep, it says Lenovo and ThinkPad.
Great. Now, as you're logging in, are you logging into the Cisco AnyConnect VPN?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Now, can you open your browser once you get everything up and running?
Sure. Does it matter which one I use?
Nope, just let me know which one you choose.
Okay, Internet Explorer is what I have open.
Great. Now, can you please type thismachine.info into your browser and read me everything below your full set of details, please?
hmm It's Mozilla slash 5.0, Windows NT 10.0, Win64x64.
Great. Okay, perfect. And you use Microsoft Outlook for email too, right?
Yes, that's correct.
So with this one, it was really interesting to me that A, he was willing to talk to me, being as that he still had a month of paternity leave left,
Wow.
um, and B, that he was home and willing to go get the computer. I know that we talk a lot about preparation and OSINT and having a clear plan. And with this particular individual, I know that a lot of people will say I got really lucky that he answered the phone. And I did, but I also took a very calculated risk because I took all the regional salespeople for whom I found cell phone numbers and I made a spreadsheet and this sounds obsessive. I put their first name, last name, phone number, their job title, and then I made columns for calls. And once or twice a week for the month before the SECTF competition, I would call their cell phone number after 5 p.m. their local time, which was my assigned call time. And I would mark whether or not they answered the phone. And then I would actually give them a score. Like if they sounded really happy to answer the phone and like they would be helpful, I gave them a 10. If they answered the phone, but they sounded kind of annoyed, I would give them something like a 6. And then over the course of about 10 or 10 or 12 calls, I averaged all their scores. And then I filtered it so that the salespeople with the highest scores went to the top. And those were the first two people I called. And this guy answered the phone pretty consistently, but he didn't sound super happy about it. And I was going to call somebody else instead. But that guy just sounded like a real jerk. So I actually pushed him off the list and I called this guy. And I'm so glad that I
Yeah. I actually empathize with that because
did.
you might think that you're obsessive compulsive, but I have a similar story. So I think I spent almost a solid Saturday going through all the numbers that I had compiled and phoning out through Skype with like a burner caller ID,
Oh my
and
gosh. Yeah.
uh, with the Skype call on mute, so I wouldn't say anything because
Yeah.
that's kind of against the rules, right? You can reach out, see if you get a warm buddy on the phone, but you
Right.
can't talk to them.
Cannot make
So,
any noise.
exactly, right? So I spent a whole Saturday at least
Oh my
trying
gosh.
phone numbers, and so I completely understand. But
Was
that's
your
smart.
call time on a Saturday?
My call time was on a Saturday, so
Yeah.
that's why I wanted to try the same weekday because
Hmm.
some call times, if you have late call times or weekend call times, those can be really tricky, and you really gotta
Really
test the
tricky.
numbers. Yeah. And private
Yeah,
sector
I
can be
agree.
interesting. So that's actually really interesting that you baseline them on like how often they pick up the phone.
Yeah, I did because I don't know if you remember this, but from the previous year I competed, the first year, I had I think 13 phone numbers, and the last phone number on my list of 13 was just the main number for the business.
Mhm.
And we got to I think 10 on my list, just hitting voicemail after voicemail after voicemail before we finally got someone. And it's like burned in my brain that the clock had already lost like 6 minutes. I think I was down to like 12 minutes left of my call time after I completed the first call. And um, I did manage to score some points, but because I missed so much of my first few minutes of the call time trying to get a live person on the phone, I was a little obsessed about it. Especially since I found out that I was calling the business after their regular business hours, and that none of the desk phones that I was finding numbers for would be useful to me. So yeah, I was pretty obsessed with it, making sure that people were calling or people were going to be able to pick up the phone for me, um, and hopefully that they would be helpful and not fight with me about it. If I ask them some questions, like, you know, I'm off work right now, or I'm headed out to pick up my kid from soccer practice. And so if they sounded annoyed, I figured they would probably be busy doing something else around that time. And because my call time was on a Thursday, which was really nice, I just picked Thursdays after 5 p.m. their local time and just did those calls every week, Wednesday or Thursday.
Awesome. Yeah. I had a similar experience on my first year competing, where I just couldn't get anybody on the phone. And
Yeah.
year, we weren't allowed to call the numbers yet to even verify that they were real numbers.
Right.
And
Which
that they were correct numbers. So they changed that.
which is which is just so hard because you don't know if the number's out of date, if it even has a human that answers it, what if it's a fax number. I've had that happen a lot. Luckily for me, the 2 years I competed, we were allowed to test it, and I would just use I would spoof a local number to the company that had already been flagged as a spam number. So if they Googled it, it would just come up as spam. And then I managed to mute myself so I didn't make any noise. So it just sounded like a spam hang up call. But they answered. And then I would just use a different one every time I tested that same person. So
you're just giving spammers a bad name, you know?
I'm sorry. It's actually me. And I know that Whitney kind of did the same thing. She was actually sitting in the audience waiting to compete and calling with no caller ID her targets that she intended to call and making sure they picked up their phone right like minutes before she stepped in the booth.
Wow.
So yeah. Let's see. So I know that we're already kind of talking about how and what we did as far as strategy and things go. But I want to emphasize again how important OSINT is to this competition. And there are people like Whitney who can take a terrible report from somebody who flaked and didn't show up to compete and get second or third that year, that she just volunteered as tribute and went for it. But me personally, I like to be over prepared, and I found that dedicating the time that I did really paid off as far as OSINT and things, for example, like finding their internal IT support number took me a month. I had the idea I wanted to call internal IT support as an internal employee, and it took me a month to find the direct dial phone number. And
what was the final bit that got you the number?
So I'd been using Google Docs to try to find PDFs on the company's domain, that maybe like a company newsletter or something like that. And I just decided that the company had so many different websites attached to their various parent and child brands, which luckily for me are all in scope. And and so I just put the newsletter, the name of the company, and a couple of other things into Google and file type PDF, and then I just started scanning each of the documents that I found, and I managed. Oh, that was what I used. It was handbook or onboarding or something like that. A new employee manual, basically. Handbook was what I was looking for. So I found a document. It was not on any of the company's domains. It was on a completely different domain. I don't know why it even stored a copy of it, but it had a section about IT support and how to get help and how to report somebody that was using technology in a bad way that was against company policy. And it ended up that the report, bad people number was the same number for, internal IT support. And I was, I was so excited when I found it. It was like 11 p.m. at night. The whole house is silent. And I found it and I just like threw my arms up and I'm like, finally! And everybody's like, what the heck is going on? But yeah, I was so excited. And it just like, it pulled everything together for me that I wanted to do in that first call and made it possible.
Perfect.
Because otherwise I wouldn't have had anyone to call.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, the one of the things you said just reminded me. So you looked at subsidiaries and parent companies and so on. I always did that for the OSINT part. Also, international locations. You're not allowed to call an international number because they haven't vetted the laws in every country. But you can get OSINT information from different countries, and that counts for the report. So I've gotten a ton of good information. If I can't find something at headquarters, I'll go to other locations, try international locations, try different countries, try sub-brands, acquisitions that they've done, right? Oftentimes acquisitions aren't as buttoned down. So there's a lot more there than just the main website. Yeah.
Right. That's actually a really good point. Because the first year I competed, I don't know why I decided to do this, but I decided that I wanted to do it like a real pen test. Like I was going to pen test this one headquarters building for the target. And I limited all of my OSINT and all of my report flags, everything I limited to this one headquarters location, like an idiot. And I still managed to, I think I was in like 5th place from the report scoring alone, but I really could have added, probably another, 30 to 50 points worth of flags if I'd really, did my due diligence OSINT wise and then included the child brands and other sites. With that particular target, they had a lot of other locations that I could have targeted. And then, so I was planning to do that this year. And then my company only had the one location in the one town. And I was like, no. But yeah.
But you're bringing up another good point. So always be conscious that it's a competition and not a pen test, right? Because different rules apply. And some of them are in your favor and some are not. So for example, what's in your favor is it doesn't all have to be for the same location. You can collect points wherever it is. And even though you wouldn't be able to string them together in a pen test where you need it all at the same location sometimes. But other things actually count against you. For example, if you were in a real pen test, you might be able to call again in an hour if they don't pick up, or you can build rapport over time, over a number of hours or days. You call them back or they call you back and so on, right? And that's not possible. And also the time pressure that you're on the phone that counts against you. You need to be super tight and super fast. And in a regular pen test, you can give yourself a little bit more time, right? So
yes.
Be
And
aware
you don't have to have that killer mentality that I think you have to have with SECTF. Specifically, being as that it is a game, I wanted to, for whatever reason, I wanted to get every flag the first time I competed. So I had a billion different pretexts, and one was designed to get this flag and one was designed to get these 4 flags. And it was really kind of a mess as far as the game strategy goes. That would have been really great in an actual, assessment. And I've had assessments since where we're able to call and have one person say, I'm trying to do this. And then they say, well, you need the account holder. And then, I tap somebody to come in as my boss and just call back and say, hey, I have my boss on the line. And that person says, hey, I'm the boss. And they go, okay, that's all I needed. And they just do it. And you've got all this time to like build the rapport and build your story. But with the SECTF specifically, it's really a matter of the instant rapport and bypassing that person's logic centers of their brain so that they do not question what it is you are asking for. And that is, I think the first time I competed, my most successful pretext was calling as somebody doing a presentation for their cafeteria vendor. to their cafeteria employees, but I needed help with, questions about how to get on site and if they had IT support there, et cetera. That was a pretext that target challenged. He said, "You're not trying to send me to a bad website, are you?" He still went there, but he questioned me. And then, so with this year, I really wanted them to feel like I was one of them, and just dive straight into it. And not only did I decide to shift from an external to an internal pretext, which I think both you and Whitney and several other extremely successful contestants have done, is the internal pretext. So I feel that's essential, but I also gave them an incentive. I said, I'm sending you a new laptop. And so they just went, new laptop. And they're like, I will give you whatever you need.
Yeah. You said something interesting. You said you try to bypass the logic circuits in their brain. Can you
Right.
tell me a little bit more about that? Maybe an example, or what do you mean by that?
So what I mean by that is I didn't want them to logically think through what I was asking them for. So I wanted them to make an impulsive or emotional choice and
Hmm.
trigger the emotional side of their brain to
Interesting.
react to what I was saying. So by incentivizing them with something like the gift of a new work laptop,
Gotcha.
it triggers the emotional response. And the reason why I use this is embarrassing to admit. So before SECTF, I had no experience with vishing or social engineering. Um, and one of the reasons why I decided to apply to compete was because I have been successfully vished. And it was like 8:30 in the morning, just sat down at my desk with my coffee, and I get a call on my phone. It's showing the valid AT&T customer service number, and the person claimed to be a customer service person who was applying a credit to my account. And they just wanted me to verify the 4 digits that were the passcode on the account. And I was like, oh, sure, that's great. And I just gave him the code, and I hung up the phone, and I went, that was weird. And I turned around and I said, I think I should probably change my PIN code on my cell phone account now. And so I immediately called customer support, and they're like, you idiot. And so they let me change the code really quickly, and we put some notes on the account, and it wasn't a problem. But they bypassed that part of my brain that would
Yeah.
have said, this sounds fishy.
That was
And
pretty decent pretext, actually.
it actually is. And then I was like, why the hell would they credit my account and have to have me verify? Like, you have access to my account. Why do you need my PIN code?
Yeah.
So yeah, it was it was, in retrospect, obviously a scam, but it was a good pretext in that it gave me an incentive, and all I had to do was provide this one little piece of information, and it actually inspired this pretext. And all I said was, I'd been given a list of people who had not connected to the VPN in a while for the corporate network, and we were getting ready to upgrade laptops. And I just wanted to go through and make sure that the software that they used would be on the computer we were shipping out. And then wrapping up the call after they went to the real company.us URL, I even asked them if they preferred me to ship out the laptop via FedEx or UPS, which is another flag, as you know. And it was probably the most incredible way that all of it could have come together. And I really credit it towards the experience the first time around, because having no professional experience myself, that first year was really a learning year. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
it taught me how to do this much better. And so then I spent the year in between just soaking up and finding and reading and listening and doing everything that I could to learn as much as I can about social engineering. And so that was,
Yeah.
yeah. Also, I
My
just
first year
decided I would,
yeah. My
I'm
first year
sorry.
was a learning year. I got 0 points the
I
first year.
know. I know. And it was so hard for me to watch. I just wanted to die for the people that got in the booth and just couldn't get anyone on the phone or just had horrendous luck.
Yeah.
I know there was one year Rob competed and the same thing happened. I believe it was the year you won. The theme was the gaming companies, and he
Mhm.
had some incredibly intricate pretexts. So he had found these people and just, scoured their Facebook accounts and used everything that he knows from, his work with Trace Labs to just thoroughly investigate all these people. And he came up with custom pretexts for every individual. And to have him not get a single person on the phone and be able to show off that preparation just like killed me for him.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was pretty horrible for him. So yeah, I'm sure there is definitely a component of luck, but calling a video game company on a Friday afternoon when they're on the East Coast and you are on the left coast is just horrendous
Yeah.
odds.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing, I did do that the first year where I did a custom pretext for people. The
Hmm.
second year, I switched my strategy and I didn't want to go after specific people. I wanted to go after specific numbers that were staffed. Because if
Hmm.
you try to reach a specific person, you always run the risk that they're not picking up the phone at that point in time.
Right.
I wanted to pick a number that's staffed and I wanted to pick a number that doesn't have a lot of process, right? Um,
Right.
so tech support is tough because they have process. You have to get them out of that script loop that they're in, right?
Right. Yeah.
Um, and so I was very lucky because the gaming company that I had as a target had retail locations, and I thought, bingo, like they're
Oh,
probably
definitely.
minimum wage. They're probably not trained on security. They probably have high turnover. They probably respond well to authority from headquarters, right? So so that was my strategy for getting somebody on the phone and getting them compliant. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that also we'll touch on your pretext specifically was an authority based pretext.
Mhm.
You really had to lean hard into, the fact that you are not only internal, but that you have authority over this sector of the business.
Mhm.
And I have watched other contestants try to take your pretext and
Mhm.
use it almost verbatim in the booth,
Mhm.
and missing that key element of confidence and the authority in that pretext, it's a complete disaster and it
Mhm.
just does not work because unfortunately for the contestants that have unsuccessfully tried to pull it off, um, they've been met with just objection after objection.
Mhm.
So who's calling you to say that there's trouble on the network and challenging every aspect of it? So I think that you did a really exceptional job
Thank
with
you.
um, playing off that authority, even though that is not your full-time job. and and uh and so I commend you there because I've seen it backfire
Mhm.
for quite a few people that
I
have
missed that call.
competed.
I would have loved to see it just to see what they did differently because
They
my
sounded like me the first year I competed.
okay.
The most recent one that I watched, they sounded like me the first year I competed. Very unsure and
Mhm.
very shaky and nervous. And that is absolutely something that you would expect when you're sitting in front of a room full of 1,000 hackers
Oh yeah.
trying to wish someone
Oh,
live
yeah.
in a glass booth. Like it's the most
Yeah.
terrifying thing in the universe.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm not even sure how I overcame the nerves that I had. I think I was just so worried about the baby, honestly. Like I nursed her in the hallway, ran to the bathroom to change her about 5 minutes before I was supposed to be in the booth, and then ran back in, threw her at my husband, jumped in the booth, and just said, "Let's go."
You had no time to get worried. Yeah.
So I had no time to like stress out about stuff. And then most people don't know this, but right before you make your calls, they play your video. And the first year I competed, Chris didn't play it. And I was like, dodged a bullet. This year he played it. And so as he's playing it, the sound and the audio from the video is going through my headphones. And so I'm listening to myself talk about my journey to this point and competing. And so I start to get like all emotional because I'm like, I just had a baby 3 months ago. I'm a wreck.
Yeah.
And so I start to tear up and I'm like, please God, don't let the audio be over the mic right now. Cause I'm like sniffling because I have to like dial numbers and call people right now.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was pretty nerve-wracking. But yeah, again, I think I bypassed the nerves because I was so worried about other things right before I competed that I didn't have a chance to psych myself out.
Yeah. And for me, it was basically I'd already lost my dignity the first. So I
You're
thought,
like, we can
can't
only
get
go
worse.
up.
Can't get worse. All right.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, I know the feeling. I think, and I have to give, tremendous respect to everyone who has competed, because this is not just, and I heard this in the audience. Somebody said, "Oh, how long do they have to prepare?" And the person next to them said, "Oh, I'm sure, it's DEF CON. They probably just tell them like 2 days in advance." And that's really not the case. I mean, we had 3 weeks to compile the report and then another week or two to kind of get our stuff together for the call portion of the contest. So there's a ton of preparation that goes into it. And if you really utilize that time, I think you can be very successful. Um, but yeah, but definitely a game. So anyway, Chris, I just wanted to say thank you so much again for joining me. I appreciate you taking time out of your day. And then I also would like to, of course, thank SEVillage, all the staff there, and especially the human hacker, Chris Hadnaghi, the original Chris.
Yeah.
And, for making this competition a reality for everyone and giving us the opportunity to compete. And then, of course, to DEF CON for hosting SEVillage. And this conference and this village have completely changed the trajectory of my life. And that is not an understatement. So I'm deeply grateful for that. And I guess that's a wrap.
Great. Thank you.